Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Lost One podcast. Joining me today, I've got Shoshima 1016.
Yo!
And that's it. It's just us two, because Samurai is busy with, actual work. Which,
what?
how dare he?
I know.
How dare he, kind of like what we talked about last week with, him actually having, family obligations and stuff. How dare he actually, work his job instead of making content for my channel?
Oh my gosh, that guy.
Yeah, especially since he's not getting paid for the podcast yet, because the podcast doesn't make any money. So
Wait, we're not getting paid?
No, I'm not getting paid either.
Oh,
so
shit.
if it makes you feel any better.
I know, right?
No one's getting paid. Except maybe Tanner, but that's because Tanner has his
He's getting the Tanner cut, and that's
he's
all
got
there
the
is.
Tanner cut. That's it. Tanner takes it all. But yeah, so anyway, this is going to be our second time recording this episode. Just a little peek behind the curtain, because we did try to have Samurai actually here in the studio. We were experimenting with some new mic layouts, seeing what we could do. And long story short, everything worked for the test, and then when we actually sat down and recorded, we had major echo and audio problems. So it was just... we literally sat and tested for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And, ran it multiple times,
And I even made you redo a test just to make sure.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And then it was fine. I literally listened to every recording. Nothing. It was good. And then, as usual, because nothing ever goes wrong whenever you're working with audio or technology, I went back and I listened to the episode and was like, we can't air this. Because, every time Samurai spoke, he was echoing off every mic. And it was just man, the way we had it set up is we didn't have a filter in between, so it was just raw right in, and there was no way to fix it.
Wow, raw and right in?
Uh-huh.
You just can't even fix that shit.
Can't even fix that.
So yes, welcome to episode 29, part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. And it's kind of a shame, too, and the reason I bring this up is because the episode is actually going to be The Winter Soldier from the MCU, Captain America and the Winter Soldier, from 2014.
Dear God. That was almost 10 years ago.
Oh, man. There was a thread on Reddit I was checking out today trying to, redeem Iron Man 3, and the arguments just were not landing. It was, it was coming from a bunch of people who were, in, third or fourth grade at the time when it came out, so they have, a lot of nostalgia for that. But, man, a lot of the arguments were just not good. And it was well, they fixed it in Shang-Chi, which is yeah, that was a decade later.
Yeah.
They didn't address it for over a decade. Come on. But yeah, it was pretty funny, and it also made me feel really old. So, on that particular note, we are going to talk about one of the best movies in the MCU. Some would put it as the best movie, even compared to the Avengers films.
Yeah.
I personally don't put it quite that high, but it's definitely in my top 5.
Uh-huh.
And I would definitely put it as the best non-Avengers movie.
Yeah, this definitely has more of a, if you're not in the whole connected universe MCU, a more casual appeal.
It does.
Compared to all the Avengers movies.
And also, while still making really good connections to the greater MCU, though.
There's connections, but it has a good enough contained spy thriller story that is easy to digest.
Yeah, which is kind of funny, because, we did just talk about Iron Man 3, and obviously we've talked about how we personally don't like it, but there is a group out there that really do, and they like it.
Yeah, they're called children.
That's the self-contained story. I'm going to let that one slide. But, and that's kind of the problem is, my big issue with it is that it is a self-contained story that has no ramifications to the greater MCU at all.
Yeah.
It makes some really questionable decisions that I'm not a fan of. Some people are hey, they really like the Mandarin twist. I'm hey, that's cool. I do think that it's better than what they would have done if they had gone with the racist caricature of the actual Mandarin.
Yeah, no, I mean, it definitely it wasn't a horrible twist, but yeah, it was a twist, I guess. It wasn't oh my gosh, what a twist!
Some of the arguments that were pushing back against the Iron Man 3 in this Reddit thread is that Aldrich Killian, I think is his name, right? He the head of AIM.
Yeah.
He just wasn't a better villain than the Mandarin. He wasn't presented as a better villain, which I think is a fair point. I was actually man, there's good points in a Reddit thread. What is the world coming to?
My gosh.
Yeah, that's another story. So anyway, enough about Iron Man 3, though. But yeah, Winter Soldier. This is a pretty significant movie for a lot of reasons. One, it is, in my opinion, the first good movie of Phase 2.
Yes.
And my God, when we talked about how Phase 2 started off with a whimper, this makes up for it, in my opinion. Not only is it a really good movie, very well done, this action spy thriller, but it also introduces Anthony Mackie as Falcon. I combined Mackie and Falcon there. Malkin.
Malkin in the middle.
Malkin in the middle. I mean, in kind of fairness, Anthony Mackie does kind of find himself in the middle here. That's kind of his character's role. But it does introduce Anthony Mackie. We obviously get Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier here.
Yep.
And we're also introduced to Agent Carter, who's played by Emily Van Camp. And so that's, if you're wondering why we both went like, haha, it's because we literally spent the whole previous recording not being able to remember her name.
I knew it started with Emily.
Yeah.
Because that was the same, she played a character in a different TV show, and that was their name. I'm like, how weird, like, your character has the same name.
I mean, they probably had the name before she was cast.
No, I understand. I'm just saying.
It is just kind of a funny coincidence, and it's probably easy to remember for all the other actors. Like, oh, hey, Emily!
Like, are you in character or not? Yeah. I don't even know. But yeah.
So we have Emily Van Camp. We obviously bring in another big character is Pierce, who's played by Robert Redford.
Yeah.
So you're talking about like a huge name. We also have a very expanded role for Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury. He actually gets to do more in this movie than he does in, I think, pretty much any other movie we've seen so far.
I mean, other than looking badass. Because he still did in the other movies.
Yeah, I mean, and he always looks badass, but he was kind of like...
He gets to be badass in this movie.
Yeah, you actually get to see him in like real action sequences, more time with him, exploring on his dynamic with Rogers.
Yeah, you get to see how much he's an OG like in this movie.
And we also get to see a lot of Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow in this, Frank Grillo as Crossbones, and it's a really all-star cast when you think about it.
Yeah.
And it's so crazy to me because Mackie will obviously go on to be one of the cornerstones in the MCU. He is now, for those who don't know, a little bit of spoilers for Phase 4, he is Captain America. And
he's also the new star in Twisted Metal.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh.
I did not know that, actually.
Yeah, Peacock is making a Twisted Metal series.
So I didn't know that, but I knew it was going to be focused around Sweet Tooth, who's going to be played by...
Samoa Joe.
Samoa Joe, which I was like, man, that's a great cast.
But the voice is it Will Arnett? Yeah, William Arnett, I think.
Possibly, yeah.
Is
that sounds
the voice for Sweet Tooth.
Yeah.
And Anthony Mackie, as far as I'm aware, is like the main character.
Oh, okay. I did not know that. Yeah, so I just know this... Anyway, we're kind of getting off track here. But good for Anthony Mackie.
But Anthony Mackie does more shit than just MCU stuff now.
Yeah, there's another movie, I think, starring Chris Evans.
Oh, Ghosted?
Is it Ghosted? Where he's like he's playing like an incompetent person who gets like attacked by a whole bunch of like...
Yeah, because like his girlfriend turns out to be a spy.
Yeah, and he's like caught in the middle.
Movie, but because that's on, I think, Apple TV.
Yeah, I just saw a clip of it on, I think it was like maybe Instagram or something, and I'm like, man, there's like a lot of MCU actors in here, because like there's Anthony Mackie, and then I think Sebastian Stan's in it.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, there's like a whole bunch of people.
Oh, I just knew Chris Evans was in it, not Captain America, is like the incompetent guy, and I'm like...
He's playing like the average Joe, which is just like, it's kind of like watching him play a villain, like in Knives Out.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
Like, he did a great job, but it's like, it's just so weird when he was Captain America for I don't know how long.
Well, yes, because obviously spoilers for Knives Out, because at first he's not like poised as the villain.
I mean,
not totally. Like, obviously it's a murder mystery, so you don't know. And I'm like, oh yeah, no, it's Chris Evans. Like, he's the Boy Scout. He's the good guy. And then all of a sudden, bam, he was the villain. I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah.
I was wrong.
Yeah. So sorry for the spoilers for Knives Out, but I figure since the sequel's out already.
Oh, I just was saying in general.
So Chris Evans, playing kind of an asshole was a little weird to watch, especially because, I think the movie I saw after that was when he was in Snowpiercer, and he was still, the good guy. So it was okay, not quite as moral as, Cap is, but,
nonetheless, the protagonist.
So, yeah, big cast. Obviously, Anthony Mackie has gone on to do a lot of great things, and... he's quickly become one of my favorite actors. Now, of course, I say that, and we talked about Jonathan Majors, and things are not looking good for him right now. So, hopefully, if anything bad comes out about Anthony Mackie at this point, I'm going to be very, very disappointed. I'm just going to have to hang up my I like these actors card because, it hasn't worked out so well with Majors, unfortunately.
To quote Samurai, he just remembers Anthony Mackie as that punk-ass rapper from 8 Mile.
Yeah, he really drove that joke into the ground during the first recording.
Yep, I just want to make sure it was in there for him, and that's it.
Yeah, so that's for you, Samurai, if you even listen to the pod, which I don't think you do. So
I'm sure he doesn't, but I poured one out for the homie, you know what I'm saying?
There you go. Poured one out for the homie. I'm glad you didn't pour it on my carpet. That's appreciated. So, without further ado, we've kind of gone off on a little bit of a tangent here for the first 10 minutes.
That's a 10-minute tangent, it's not bad.
But, yeah, I mean, for us, it's not bad at all, but, especially for me. But let's just kind of dive into the summary of this movie. So it opens up with Captain America on a mission, right? You know, he's running around, and so it actually is before his mission, but he's running around the lake outside of the in DC. It's
he's running like on the track or just around the lake, right?
Yeah, it's around the lake, but it's like where all the monuments are, like the Washington Monument and stuff like that. And he's doing laps around it. And you actually see Anthony Mackie's character is running, and then you see Cap who's like sprinting. You know,
but for Cap, he's really just running.
Yeah, he's just running.
That's his run, but it's like everyone else's like massive sprint
on your left. And yeah, so you're
don't say it. Don't say
it on your left. Ah! You just ran like 20 miles or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So you know, obviously, you know, Cap introduced himself to Sam. They hit it off, and you know, Sam. It turns out that Cap has a list of all the stuff he missed. He's trying to catch up on.
Yeah.
And you know, fun fact about this list is that if you watch it like from different countries, so they're different like sources of origin, they'll have different items on the list based on your country of origin.
That's so cool, though.
Yeah, so it's pretty cool. So, and then, you know, Mackie, or Wilson, of course, you know, mentions Marvin Gaye, and, you know, it's like, you got to listen to this, and, you know, there's like Star Wars, Star Trek on it, you know.
Yeah, because isn't it like in England or whatever, there was the Beatles or something on there, right?
So like the Beatles were on that in England, and then, every like culture had like something culturally significant on the list.
It is funny to think about, too, because like Star Wars and Star Trek and like the Beatles are so old for like us nowadays.
Yeah.
But to think like Cap just missed it.
There's a story I'll have to tell you after we're done recording about when Paul McCartney worked with like some younger artist, and like a whole generation like didn't know who he was, and it just made me so sad.
Oh, I remember Paul McCartney working with Kanye West.
Yeah.
And it was people were on Twitter were like, oh man, I don't know who this Paul McCartney guy is, but he really has a shot to make it big.
That was the story I was going to tell you off air, so thank you for not taking the hint and letting us move on.
Well, you're welcome. What can I say? But you're welcome.
But yeah, so that was the story, and it's just... Anyway, so Cap, you know, meets up with Sam, and, you know, they quickly strike up a rapport. Cap learns that Sam is actually helping, you know, veterans who have come back from overseas and missions as kind of like this counselor, working with the VA. And, you know, basically, Natasha Romanoff shows up, makes a crack about Cap being a fossil, which, you know, I'm sure he's used to at this point. And they go off on a mission with, I think it's Strike, the Strike team. And that's led by Crossbones, played by Frank Grillo.
Yeah, but currently he's not Crossbones, right?
No, he's not Crossbones yet. He's, you know, he's Hydra, as we'll find out later.
Yes.
But you know, he hasn't taken up the moniker of Crossbones yet. But comic book fans would recognize him, Rumlow, as Crossbones.
Who would be Crossbones? Okay.
Yeah. And so they go on a mission. I think it's called like the Namarian Star or something like that. And for some reason, Jasper Sitwell's on there. And Cap immediately kind of points out, like, it's really weird that Sitwell is on this ship. Like, why would he be on the ship? Because Sitwell, for those that don't know in comics, he's like internal affairs for S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh, okay.
So his comic book history is he's like internal affairs. He's not that in this. He was like Coulson's partner and like confidant, you know, loyal agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. under Fury.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of where he's built up in the MCU, but fans of comics will recognize Jasper Sitwell as literally like internal affairs for S.H.I.E.L.D. He's the guy who does investigating and rooting out corruption within S.H.I.E.L.D. So in other words, most S.H.I.E.L.D. agents don't like him because that's his job.
Yeah.
So it's a bit weird that, you know, Sitwell is on this boat and being held hostage by terrorists. Long story short, Cap basically single-handedly clears out the entire ship. I think Grillo gets like one shot in, and it's like, you really needed the help. You know?
Cap, I can do this all day.
Yeah, they rescue most of the hostages. Cap gets into an extended fight. He wins it, and discovers Natasha Romanoff, who was supposed to be working on a mission and was ordered to go back up the strike team to help escort the hostages out, isn't doing that and is instead downloading the files from the ship, which Cap wasn't aware of.
Yeah.
So Cap meets up with Fury. Cap's pissed because, you know, in war, how he's used to doing things is everyone works together.
Yeah, because he's used to the soldier mentality.
Whereas Fury, compartmentalization. No one knows the whole plan. if I don't tell them the whole plan.
Yeah.
You know, so if someone gets compromised, they can't necessarily reveal every detail.
Yeah, because if something happens, it's better not to know everything.
And as Cap points out, except Fury. Fury's the one who knows everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so in kind of an effort to win Cap over, Fury overrides access protocol to show Cap Project Insight, which is 3 helicarriers with automatic targeting. And that's pretty scary, as Cap points out. Like, this is fear.
Yeah.
Like, this is not security, this is not freedom, this is fear. Mm-hmm. You're using fear to control people. And so, Cap goes off, he's pissed.
Yeah.
Goes to visit Peggy, who it turns out still alive, but very old and apparently suffering from Alzheimer's.
Oh, okay.
And, they kind of have a moment. Fury, meanwhile, tries to access the drive that Natasha Romanoff provided him from the Lemurian Star, and find he can't. It's encrypted. Runs decryption. That fails. And when he asks, basically he doesn't have the authority, he's director of S.H.I.E.L.D., who has higher authority than him. Mm-hmm. And he asks the machine, and it says, oh, by authority of Nick Fury. And Fury's like, okay, that's a bit weird.
Uh-huh.
Fury leaves, drives in one of his very, very fancy government SUVs.
Yes.
And calls Maria Hill, asking her to come back in, his trusty sidekick, and most trusted confidant. And then gets attacked by DC police. Only the scanner's showing there's no active DC police in the area. So there's a whole bunch of people who stole a bunch of cop cars, stole uniforms, disguised themselves as police, and are now attacking the director of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Seems legit.
Fury gets to kind of show off his spy skills and his resourcefulness. And right as he kind of makes his escape, a mysterious figure shows up and attacks him. The Winter Soldier.
Dun, dun, dun.
Fury almost gets killed, manages to escape with some clever last-minute thinking into a sewer.
Yeah.
And
it's always the sewer, too, for the escape.
Yeah, I mean, if it's New York or Washington, there's a big sewer system, so it makes sense. But,
sorry.
Fury goes to Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Yep.
One of the only people in town he can trust, because Hill's not there yet. Hands him the...
Imagine the movie if Hill was there then.
Oh, right. That wouldn't have lasted too long. Maria, you don't mess with Maria Hill, man.
I know, right? She'll fuck you up.
She will. Played by Colby Smulders.
Yeah.
Who is a fantastic actress in her own right.
Yeah, who I know as Robin from
How I Met Your Mother.
Mother, yes. Yeah. Sorry. I got it backwards because we've been watching the new series. My bad. Hey, she was in there too.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're not technically wrong, so that's why I'm not correcting you. But...
Yeah, no, How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, but her...
So it was interesting to watch her go from like that to Maria Hill, but it shows her acting chops.
Exactly. Like, she's got range.
Yeah.
And so Fury hands over the drive to Rogers. Fury then gets sniped by the Winter Soldier through Rogers' apartment window. Mm-hmm. And we learn that Emily Van Camp's character, who is just,
who he thought was just the girl next door.
Yeah. Even went so far as to try and ask her for a date. For, like, the first time in, like,
100 years?
And ends up...
realizing she's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent?
Ends up that she's a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent working for Fury.
Who was just keeping tabs on Rogers the whole time?
On Fury's orders, as well as Fury bugging his apartment, too. So, again, Fury, always paranoid.
Just saying the ultimate cockblock, just saying,
A little bit.
Turns out she was a spy the whole time.
Yeah, and it gets weirder, but we'll talk about that in Civil War. So Cap goes after Winter Soldier, ends up chasing him down after an extended sequence, throws his shield, Winter Soldier catches it, one of the most badass moments in the MCU up until that point, with one arm. Cap can't believe it. Then he throws it back and actually causes Cap, with such force that it causes Cap to
reel back,
to literally skid backwards while he's catching it. And, of course, the Winter Soldier vanishes at that point. Fury is taken to a hospital, preferably one under S.H.I.E.L.D. control, I would imagine. Hill arrives, Romanoff arrives, Fury seems to die. Romanoff, Natasha, Black Widow, questions Rogers, senses something doesn't smell right. Why was he in your apartment? Mm-hmm. What did he tell you? Rogers is a bad liar, of course. He'll get better, but not by much.
Huh.
And
he has a good teacher. Later.
Yeah, basically Rogers gets summoned to speak with Director Pierce, Alexander Pierce of S.H.I.E.L.D., who is technically Fury's boss and the liaison for the Security Council.
Mm-hmm.
Rogers tells him the truth, but not the whole truth. He omits some stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And also hides the drive in a vending machine. Rogers then gets attacked by the strike team in an elevator, which is in one of the best action sequences, I think, in the entire MCU. It's definitely one of the most memorable.
Yes. Him just picking up the shield after.
Yep. Manages to escape from S.H.I.E.L.D. by jumping out a window. And
not a sewer.
Not a sewer, but he jumps out a window.
Yeah.
Gets on a motorcycle, ends up trashing a Quinjet, and escapes.
On that window scene, was it him, the one where he just turtles up and lands on the shield when he jumps out, right?
That's it. Yeah, that's the one. That shield is man.
Because you look at Chris Evans and he's not huge, but I mean he's a big guy, and he just turtles up into that perfect size of that shield. I swear
he does. So it's pretty crazy. But I think as Peter Parker quotes, "Man, that shield does not follow any known laws of physics, does it?"
Oh, I know. I saw a meme about that where it's looking at the shield. It's yeah. It's oh, is this shield magic? He's no, it's science. It's made out of vibranium.
Yeah.
It absorbs all kinetic energy. So wouldn't, instead of it bouncing, it just
yeah, it would just fall. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not magic?
No, it's both.
Yeah.
It's comic book science, which is
magic.
Magical. Yeah. So, Rogers goes back, finds the drive's missing, confronts Natasha, who has the drive. Mm-hmm. And they kind of agree to work together, based on their time in the Avengers together, and of course working together as members of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah.
And they have kind of a very humorous exchange in an Apple store where they're decrypting the drive.
Yeah, I forgot they go to an Apple store to decrypt the drive.
And of course, when they try to decrypt the drive, that alerts S.H.I.E.L.D. to their location, so Rumlow and the strike team go there, and have a very humorous exchange. Public displays of affection makes people very uncomfortable. Yes, it does.
Yeah. You are correct. I am not arguing.
Captain America knows how to hotwire a car.
Yeah.
They steal, or as Cap says, borrow a car.
Borrow without giving back.
Drive down to the very same military base where Cap was trained. And the idea where he was born is, I can't remember what the name is, but it's in New Jersey. And they discover none other than, oh my god, I'm blanking on his name.
Is it Zolov?
Zolov, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, Zolov, whose brain has been imprinted in super duper old computer technology.
I know, that shit just blew my mind, looking at the, it's already the old school, supercomputer.
Yeah.
And somehow they were able to get his mind in that shit.
Well, with all those memory banks, that's probably what it took.
No, it was that whole server room was just probably his consciousness.
Uh-huh. And as it turns out, he kind of spills the whole evil plan in an effort to stall them while S.H.I.E.L.D. could launch some missile at them.
Yeah.
And tells them that, that drive contains an algorithm which finds any threat to Hydra. And as it turns out that, Zolov and other members of Hydra were recruited in Project Paperclip, which was based on a real-life operation that the United States government did to recruit German, formerly Nazi scientists to their cause so they didn't fall under the hands of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And so Zolov used that to basically regrow Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. And which, honestly, was a pretty great twist.
Yeah.
And a great way to bring Hydra back into relevancy after, them seemingly have been defeated after the first Captain America film. They identify Sitwell. They go to meet up with Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson, who takes him in, basically throws him a resume, reveals that he was not a pilot, but pararescue, specifically, where he wore a Falcon exosuit. Mm-hmm. They go off camera, break it in and seal it. And you get to see Anthony Mackie's Falcon suit debut, which was pretty freaking sweet. A great modern take. As opposed to the yellow and red that we see a lot of times with like the classic suit.
Yeah, he just went and reclaimed his suit. You know, that's all.
Pretty much.
Didn't steal it from a government agency.
They kidnapped Jasper Sitwell, who they learn is a Hydra agent, along with Samuel Stearns, who's a sitting senator. And Samuel Stearns actually made an appearance, I believe, in Iron Man 2. So he actually had appeared prior. So he was another character they brought back. Sitwell spills the whole thing after Romanoff literally kicks him off a building. Then Sitwell gets one of the most brutal deaths of the MCU that we see on screen, where the Winter Soldier literally rips him from his seat in a car when they're driving to S.H.I.E.L.D. And throws him into oncoming traffic. There's an extended fight sequence that leads to basically everyone getting caught. Maria Hill shows up again, has infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D. and rescues them, breaks them out. They meet up with Fury, who turns out to have survived using an injection that slowed his heartbeat to one beat per minute, which made it look like he flatlined. Developed by our good boy Bruce Banner.
Yeah.
To hopefully prevent the Hulk.
Yeah, it was an anti-Hulk serum that he used to fake his own death.
Yeah, which didn't work so well for Banner, but worked pretty well for Fury. Cap basically overrules Fury and says, hey, we have to wipe out all of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra because they're the same thing.
Yeah.
And, we got to destroy Project Insight because they're going to use that to target everybody. And during that, we actually got a Stephen Strange mention by Sitwell. He points out that Sitwell was one of the targets. So, fun fact about that. So the algorithm did work, at least in one case. Yeah,
in that big highway fight scene, isn't that the one where the Winter Soldier 2 just holds his metal hand out to block incoming bullets?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I just remember that was in one of the scenes, and they ended up putting that in the Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, the game.
Yeah.
One of his special moves is he just hold his hand out and blocks everything.
Sounds about right. So, the combined Allied forces now with Widow, with Cap, Falcon, Maria Hill, they all infiltrate S.H.I.E.L.D. Basically with a plot to replace the targeting chips on the 3 helicarriers to target each other at the same time. And all 3 have to be replaced. Falcon and Cap manage to replace the first 2 before Falcon gets grounded by the Winter Soldier. The Winter Soldier, of course, is waiting for Cap at the final spot. They have a big showdown. Cap ends up, I believe, using a sleeper hold to make him pass out, ultimately, after a long, extended fight. Manages to get the chip in at the last minute. The helicarriers blow each other up. Cap falls into the water. Bucky, who seems to finally regain a bit of his memory, pulls him out of the water and then goes to, in an after-credit scene, we'll go visit the Captain America museum at the exhibit at the Smithsonian to kind of refresh who he is and, regain some of his memories. Hydra and S.H.I.E.L.D. basically split off with Maria Hill becoming working for Stark Industries, using the Stark legal team to protect her. Fury is presumed dead and goes undercover. Sam and Cap decide to go search for Bucky. And Black Widow basically tells the government to go fuck itself, for lack of a better term, in a hearing. Because she leaked part of their plan with Widow and with Fury was to essentially leak all of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra's secrets to the internet. And they did so successfully, while also taking out Alexander Pierce. Rumlow gets a building dropped on him, quite literally, after a bit of an extended fight with Sam Wilson. But does survive, and will appear in the next movie.
Yep.
But that's kind of how the movie ends. So that's kind of a brief summary. And I say brief, but here we are 30 minutes in.
It's only a 20-minute summary.
Right? Oh, I mean, we did get sidetracked twice, so...
I blame Tanner.
Right. But, yeah, so what are your kind of thoughts on the movie? What do you think are the highs and lows of this movie?
Yeah, no, I mean, I liked, again, there was the good fight scenes. I mean, there's even, the thriller, chase scenes, of Cap and a Black Widow, trying to run away from the strike team.
Yep.
And actually, I liked Cap and Black Widow's dynamic.
Yeah, they had really good chemistry. Chris
where,
Evans and Scarlett Johansson had great chemistry together.
Exactly, where it's it almost seems maybe they'll get together, maybe? The way their chemistry was.
Yeah.
But then it was just cool how they didn't, force it and, make it a thing. It just, they were able to have, a good relationship between the two of them.
Yeah, they would become partners. Both would become, in Age of Ultron, they would become the two leaders of the Avengers when Tony kind of steps back and Clint retires. And obviously with Hulk going missing at the end of Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And Thor going to basically investigate the Infinity Stones. So they're kind of the only two senior members left of the Avengers team.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we would see their relationship again. Like Cap would kind of mention how, because, Romanov and Bruce are flirting in Age of Ultron, and Cap would mention, like, yeah, I've seen her flirt up close. And Bruce would be like, what do you mean up close? Because Bruce is a lovable dork, and we love him.
Uh-huh.
But, yeah, and then they would continue to work together, and even after the snap in Endgame, when Widow is feeling useless and frustrated, Steve comes to try and cheer her up.
Yeah.
And, they still retain kind of that witty banter throughout the entirety of their relationship.
Yeah.
Not to mention, in between, Civil War and Infinity War, they have been on the run together at that point for several years.
Yeah.
And they show up to rescue Wanda and Vision in Infinity War when they need trouble. So, yeah, we'll see this is the start of a really good partnership between the two. What else kind of stood out to you about this movie?
Yeah, I mean, I liked the, no matter, I guess, how anime it was, the whole, Bucky and Cap, we're friends, I'm not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Dynamic. And, to the end, Cap making sure to just make Bucky pass out, but with that, running out of time for the helicarrier crashing and can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So then Bucky saves him in the process.
Yep.
Yeah,
it's good stuff, and it's very much in line with the character of Steve Rogers.
Yeah,
at least in the MCU. He is the Golden Boy, and some people, I know Sean Bolin has talked about how he was the one thing he didn't like about Cap was how Cap was always right, and that's something that Tony refers to multiple times. It's I freaking hate you because you are this beacon of just morals.
Yeah.
And it's pretty crazy because, Cap, he's always trying to do the right thing, and that's a big part of, his character arc. And this, especially, is that it was so black and white in World War II. The Nazis were obviously the bad guys.
Yeah.
But here, this is more spy games, where members of Hydra and no one knows who's on whose side.
Correct.
And that results in this giant civil war that happens within S.H.I.E.L.D. And Cap is not necessarily the greatest at that. That's not his wheelhouse.
No.
And he'll get better at it, as time goes on.
Yeah.
But at this point, he's still very much a man at a time, trying to kind of catch up on everything he missed. For me, my highlight, it has to be Anthony Mackie. Because he is, at this point, I don't think he was had many big roles. He had been, I think, mostly a side character. And here, he's still kind of the side character, but he's now, fans of the comics know, even at this point, Sam Wilson becomes Captain America in the comics. So does Bucky.
Yeah.
But, here, we're if you're going to introduce someone with the character of Falcon, you are opening up a huge can of worms because you now have the potential for a black Captain America. And as will be heavily explored in Falcon and Winter Soldier, that is not something that people, even now, in the year of our Lord, 2023, can still accept.
Correct.
Which is insane to me, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's a whole different debate. But I do like how that show took the time to address that, though, too.
I do. And a lot of people didn't like that, but I'm like, you can't have Sam without talking about that.
Yeah.
Because that's what he dealt with in the comics, too. Same thing.
The way they put that in a series, and we'll talk more when we get there,
No.
In the Lost in the MCU, but just having it as a series just gave it the opportunity to do stuff like that.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about the highs and lows of that series, because there are some things it does well. In my opinion, that is one of the things it does well. There's other things that aren't quite as good.
No, it's not a perfect series, but at least I didn't try to shoehorn it in a 3-hour movie.
I agree, 100%. And
is all I'm getting at.
It's something, too, that, Anthony Mackie proved to be have an excellent chemistry with Chris Evans.
Yeah.
And as we would later find out with Sebastian Stan.
Yes.
And also Tom Holland, which is a little insider baseball for those who don't know about Sebastian Stan and Anthony Mackie's long-running rivalry. of playing practical jokes and basically making fun of each other.
Oh, okay.
With Tom Holland in the media. So they have a very interesting three-way relationship, and we'll see a bit of that chemistry on screen in Civil War. But yeah, like Anthony Mackie, in my opinion, becomes the MVP in a lot of ways. He does become like the everyman perspective in a world of super spies and super soldiers. He is literally just a guy in a wingsuit. And while, yes, he does have that military training, he's not like a total civilian.
Yeah.
He is an ordinary guy, and he's portrayed that way. The fight with Rumlow he's losing. He's holding his own, but you got to remember, Rumlow is like a super special agent, trained from like birth in combat, basically. Mackie is in great shape, knows how to fight, uses weapons, and a Falcon suit. But he doesn't have a suit at this point. So it's just a one-on-one fight, and he's outmatched.
Yeah.
He even makes a reference when Widow and Cap show up at his door. He's like, I made breakfast if, you all Avengers do that sort of thing.
Yeah. Do you guys even eat?
Yeah, he is very much just kind of like this, about as close to a normal person that we have gotten at this point in the MCU as a hero. And again, that's not to say we'll get more quote-unquote normal people later, but Mackie in many ways was the first.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think, aced the role. I also want to give a big shout out to Samuel L. Jackson, who, honestly, at this point, I think no one should be surprised when he does deliver. But getting to see Fury in action, it's one thing for Fury to like just look like a badass and talk like a badass, which we know Sam Jackson can do.
Oh yeah,
but it's another,
he's one bad motherfucker.
It's another thing to actually, when given the opportunity to accurately, demonstrate this is the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This is the best spy in the business. And credit to the Russo brothers, credit to Sam Jackson for giving him the opportunity to shine, and then for Sam Jackson for knocking it out of the fucking park.
Yeah.
He is incredible. We get to see a bit more from Colby Smuthers as well. Get to see how badass Maria Hill is.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. Excellent portrayal. Again, we kind of already sang her praises a little earlier. Scarlett Johansson, as you mentioned, was a great addition to this. Great foil for Cap. Really helped with her character arc as well, because she even makes a mention of like, I thought I was going straight. It turns out I just traded the KGB for Hydra, and like you can only imagine what she's going through at this point.
For sure.
And that, I think we'll talk more about this in the beginning, but like this is around the time where they should have pulled the trigger on a Black Widow solo film.
Yeah.
Instead, they waited
way too late,
way too long, and then they had the bad timing of it coming out around the pandemic. Just a whole bunch of misses, I think, with the Black Widow movie, which is really unfortunate. But
it coming out after Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was Phase 4.
Yeah, it coming out after Endgame just baffles me, honestly.
Yeah, like, I would have been more sympathetic if it had come out, like, after Civil War. Like, I think that probably would have been ideal, but, like, right here would have been a good time to do it, too. Like,
but, yeah, after Endgame, you're like, none of this matters. Literally nothing matters. Anyway.
But, yeah, I mean, she crushes it. And, of course, we have to give the shout-out to the man, Chris Evans.
The man, the myth, the legend.
This is, again, and Sebastian Stan as well for their portrayals. Though, to be fair, Sebastian Stan doesn't have, like, a lot of, like, actual acting moments. He just has to look like a badass. And
yeah, he does a pretty good job.
He does. But I'm just saying, like, as far as, like, getting to see his acting chops, we get to see a bit more of that in Civil War.
Yeah.
And then in Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Yeah, we get to see plenty there.
So, but yeah, here he just kind of looks. He gets to play the brainwashed assassin, which is pretty limiting.
Yeah.
But I still think he does a good job. And this is a big shout out to the costuming and everything for bringing the Winter Soldier to life.
Yeah, that arm is just still great.
Oh, and it still holds up too, which is pretty cool. But they do a great job. But yeah, for me, the MVP of this has to be Anthony Mackie, because this is an opportunity that a lot of actors would have crushed for. And he comes in and he not only knocks it out of the park, but he ends up having a great chemistry with basically everybody in the movie.
Yeah.
And, he even has a great line with Sam Jackson where Nick Fury's like looking at him for support, and he just goes, don't look at me. I just do what he does. I'm just slower.
Yeah.
Like, he has some of the best one-liners in this movie, including, hey, Cap, how do we know the good guys from the bad guys?
Oh, the bad guys are the ones shooting at us.
Hey, Cap, I found some of those bad guys you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I just think they just handled, like, everyone's relationship very well in this movie.
Yeah.
You know, as far as, I don't have any one particular character. I mean, obviously, you know, Anthony Mackie coming in as Falcon,
Yeah.
you know, was good. And, you know, it was fresh as far as the other characters. But just the way they handled everyone's relationships,
Yeah.
you know, and character dynamics was really good in this movie.
A lot of character development here, especially for, like, you know, Natasha Romanoff's Black Widow, who had some, you know, more character development than Hawkeye at this point.
Yeah.
But, you know, we really didn't know her as a character. You know, she was a spy. We knew that. We know there was some references to, like, Budapest and some other, you know, ops with Hawkeye that they've made. But at this point, like, you know, she wasn't really, quote unquote, like a center point in the movie until here. You know, like, don't get me wrong, she played a very large role in Avengers, and she did have a pretty significant role in Iron Man 2, but didn't really get to really flesh out her character that much. But this does. We get to see a more vulnerable human side to her character.
For sure.
As opposed to this super spy. This is a character who, like, literally is coming with the realization that she thought she was trading it when she traded into KGB to S.H.I.E.L.D. She was trying to go straight.
Yeah.
It was her second chance. And instead, she's working for Hydra, which is partnered with the KGB, as we've mentioned with, like, the Winter Soldier program.
Yep.
So it was a pretty big shock to her, and Scarlett Johansson just crushes it.
Yeah.
You know, every ounce of interaction she has with Rogers is just gold. She has some, you know, pretty good, you know, individual moments as well. Her standing up to Alexander Pierce is, in my opinion, like, just with that shock and then tasing herself.
Yeah.
So she doesn't, you know, she's not a risk. So Fury could shoot Pierce is just, again, super badass. And I give a lot of credit to the Russos, because the Russos, and of course the writers of this movie, because they really would find a way, at least in my opinion, to balance all these other characters in a very, very good manner.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's why I think they got brought back for Civil War, and why they were basically handed Infinity War and Endgame.
Yeah.
And as we know, they knocked all of those out of the park.
Oh yeah, because they had to juggle so many characters in the Infinity War and Endgame movies.
And they made just about every character matter. There's a couple. We'll talk about this more, but, like, James Gunn has kind of talked about how the Guardians weren't necessarily handled super well, and I think that's fair.
Dude, there's so many characters. Like, obviously, someone can't, like, have too much.
But I just, again, I want to be clear that, like, we're given a lot of praise for how they juggled their characters here, and they didn't really miss anyone here. Granted, it was a smaller cast than they had to juggle in Infinity War and Endgame. But there are some Guardian characters like Drax and Mantis who get zero love at all in both Infinity War and in Endgame. And decisions that, you know, while understandable, the biggest gripe of Infinity War is Peter Quill and how he reacts to Thanos killing Gamora. So and that's something that, like, James Gunn and Chris Pratt have both said that they disagreed with. So the Guardians, at least in my opinion, didn't really get their kind of just due. But we'll talk more about that and why that is and why those decisions were made when we cover Infinity War and Endgame, you know, in the future.
Yeah.
But again, major praise to the Russo brothers for managing to make every character have moments, you know, shining moments.
Yeah.
Showing off how, you know, how good they are, and balancing this large cast of characters while still managing to have an incredible story. And again, as we've said, like, I think I would argue that this might be some of the best action sequences in the MCU. Like the fights with Winter Soldier, Fury's moment in the sun, like, these are all really, really good. The elevator fight, like, and at least in my opinion, like, I don't think there's a movie that has this many great action sequences in it.
Civil War was pretty good. You know, I'm not saying it's better, but it's up there.
No, I would agree, but again, that's another Russo brothers. You know? So the Russos, I think
I guess I'm not disproving you so much on that front.
Yeah, more reinforcing the point that, like, yeah, they're really freaking good at what they do.
Yeah.
So, and, you know, the best thing for me, and, you know, we've been singing the praises of this movie, right? But there is one negative I need to address, because I at least was very critical of Iron Man for this. Hydra gets brought back in the most epic way here.
Yep.
and then immediately taken out, like literally the next movie they're relevant.
Yep.
It kind of feels like a waste.
Yep.
And I don't know how much of that is the fault of the Russos or Marvel or Feige, but you bring Hydra back. They played a huge role in the first Captain America movie. They played a huge role in this one. And then they're literally taken out in the first act of Age of Ultron.
Yep.
And it just feels like this is a big miss to me.
It you know, kind of how we've been going through and talking about Marvel's villain problem.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't just a villain. This is a whole organization.
Mm-hmm.
And they were in, you know, one movie, or, well, the two movies. I mean, it's safe. Yeah, those two movies. And then, but then the way they're taken out, it's not like a whole climactic third, like a trilogy. No, it's just...
No, they literally just get punked in the first act of Age of Ultron,
like almost in passing.
And then Strucker literally gets killed off screen. Mm-hmm. Like he just gets killed off screen. Like you don't even see his death. So
yeah, it was very weird the way they did it.
It does definitely feel like the villain problem is really the big issue here with Marvel, and you know I think this is just a prime example. It's like the Russos literally set up. You now have Hydra, which had S.H.I.E.L.D.'s resources, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s access all over the globe for, you know, at this point, 70 years?
Yeah, who knows?
Give or take?
Yeah.
And they just get punked out in, like, Age of Ultron? Mm-hmm. Like,
well,
there's no sleeper cells, there's no, like, nothing.
Just that first act, like, that first part of the movie, just, okay, we're done.
Yeah, and I can already hear, Shenzo and Shoshima, what about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is never confirmed to be MCU canon. In fact, if anything, it's part of the multiverse, which is super unfortunate.
Yeah.
But Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. literally never gets acknowledged by the MCU movies.
That was just an actual TV show, not a streamed show. It's not canon. The actual aired TV show.
Yeah, this was before...
That's really crazy to think about. Like, in 2023, the TV show that got on actual air is like, no, that's not canon. But this other stuff that we just, like, dump on streaming sites... That's canon.
That's canon, yeah. But, I mean, that's the way canon works.
No,
right?
I know.
So, and there is a reason for that with, like, the split behind, like, Marvel TV and the creative committee. And you know, we can dive more into that. But, like, we'll talk probably more about that around the time of, like, Ant-Man. Because that's when it really becomes apparent. That's when the creative committee gets to... around that time is when they get dismissed and all sorts of other things. But we'll talk Ant-Man and Guardians. So, actually, I think our next episode we'll probably talk more about the creative committee. But... For those that don't know, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. was part of Marvel TV, which was not part of Marvel Studios. It was separate. This was, you know, right around the time that, you know, Disney had just bought Marvel after you know, the Avengers had come out, like right around that time. And yeah, there was a big split between like Marvel Television and the Marvel movies. And we'll talk more about that, you know, later. But basically, yeah, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. ended up doing way more with Hydra than the MCU did.
Yeah.
Hydra was basically either a villain or had direct connections for 4 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. The back half of Season 1, Season 2, Season 3, and Season 4 all had Hydra involved in some way. Mm-hmm. Hydra would then come back later when they go back through time. So technically 5 seasons, because I think that Hydra was involved in Season 7 as well pretty heavily.
Oh, okay.
So Hydra played a very big role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., not so much in the greater MCU, and that is probably the one big thing because we kind of talked about how like AIM is like literally never addressed again.
Yep.
After Iron Man 3. Mm-hmm. Hydra is like given a bit of a moment. You're introducing Strucker at the end of an end credit scene. Mm-hmm. And then he just gets killed off in, like, the first act, and he's, like, never used.
Yep.
And it's just, like... Ugh. It just feels like such a wasted opportunity. Mm-hmm. Especially because you have, like, Fury, who, at the end of Winter Soldier, is like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go, like, break up all the other cells, like, in Europe and Africa and everywhere else. And it's like, oh, he just apparently does all that off screen, like according to the MCU. Mm-hmm. And it just feels like such a wasted opportunity. Like, could you imagine if they had been doing like, if they had better coordination with their television at that time, like with their organizational structure, and they could do like what they're doing with the Marvel TV shows now in Phase 4 and Phase 5?
Yeah. It would have been really awesome if they could have done that back then.
At least they would have gotten some more mileage, I think, out of a lot of their villains. But instead, it's like, again, it's like Marvel has a villain, they use it, and then they just kill it off. And it's like, okay. And with this, they don't even have an excuse because AIM and Hydra are both ideals. So even if you kill off like their leader, you can just create a new one. But no, they don't even do that.
It's like a whole organization, let alone like just a villain.
Yeah.
That's even more egregious.
It's pretty crazy, and it's one of the biggest criticisms, and I think rightfully so, of the MCU, is the way they handle their villains, and there's nothing better. You literally have, like, you could have made Hydra one of, like, the main recurring Avengers movies, like, villains. Like, maybe not necessarily the big bads, because obviously, like, Hugo Weaving not wanting to return as Red Skull, but like you have Baron von Strucker, who they would use in Civil War, but he has no Hydra connections, so that was a bit weird. Or Baron von Strucker is Zemo. Baron von Zemo, not Strucker.
Zemo.
Strucker appears in an end credit scene introducing Quicksilver and the Scarlet Witch, and then he gets killed off in the first act. It's like, dude, you just killed off like all three of your major Hydra players like immediately.
We just need Hydra Bob.
Yeah. Well, they couldn't, quote-unquote, use that because of his ties to Deadpool. But now they can because they own Fox again.
Yeah.
So we'll probably see Bob, Agent of Hydra, at some point.
Maybe in Deadpool 3.
Yeah, probably. I mean, Bob did appear in I think it was Deadpool 1.
Did he?
Yeah, but they couldn't use Hydra, so he's just Bob.
Oh, okay.
But he's the dude who's like, Bob? Wade? Oh, hey, how's it going? How are the... He's like the one guy Deadpool doesn't kill. He just knocks him out.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does appear, and that's what that's referencing.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Yeah, it's just, it feels to me like, and again, this isn't necessarily a fault of the movie, but it is like a criticism, is that they set up Hydra and then just don't do anything with it. It's like, oh man, they brought Hydra back, they've been pulling the strings all along.
Yeah, because I mean, the way they brought Hydra out in Winter Soldier was really great.
Yeah.
Like, it was a good twist that just, they were all like in throughout S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yep.
And... you know, you thought it was going to be like this big force, like for the next foreseeable future.
And then, nope, they're just gone after, like, they're addressed the first act of the next Avengers movie, and then they're just gone. They never come back. Which isn't entirely true. There are, like, quote-unquote Hydra members who do make appearances, like in Ant-Man, for example. But they're never really, like, the focus. And it's like, so they're there, but they're not really there.
Yeah, it was like there to remind us that they're there. So we like, okay, that's going to be like a running theme in all the movies. And then, then they just...
And they just don't appear like ever again. I think Ant-Man is like one of the last times they canonically appear in the MCU, which is pretty sad.
Yeah.
And again, it's like it's a glorified cameo. It's not even like they have a big role because the primary opponent in Ant-Man is Darren Cross. So, but... yeah, that's a whole other story, and it's definitely something that, you know, I think Marvel has a weakness for. And, like, even here, the Winter Soldier is the primary, you know, antagonist, and we would know, obviously, that would become a big struggle with him, you know, becoming a hero again.
Yeah.
But yeah, they kill off, you know, Alexander Pierce, Robert Redford. Of course, Redford would retire shortly after this movie was released. I think he only had a couple more years in his career at that point. But, yeah, so... that's kind of the big miss here, at least in my opinion. But again, still probably one of the top movies, and it's just, that's more of an issue with the greater MCU than the movie itself.
Yeah, because the movie itself handles Hydra and everything very well.
Extremely well, yeah.
Contained in this movie.
It was a big surprise. Like, I remember, like, and this is when, like, Hail Hydra became, like, a meme.
Yeah.
But, like, it literally took the internet by storm by how well they pulled off this twist.
Yes.
You know, there's some twists, like, the Mandarin twist was super controversial.
Yeah.
This twist was, I think, pretty much universally recognized as, like, this was a great, like, this was a great raising of the stakes for this movie. And, yeah, so overall, I have really nothing but praise for this movie. Do you have any final thoughts you kind of want to share on this?
Yeah, I kind of want to put on our tinfoil hats and ask you a question.
Yeah, what's up?
So we were talking about, you know, how Nick Fury had the drive, and he couldn't decode it because Nick Fury encrypted it.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because that Nick Fury was the Skrull?
Dun, dun, dun! Probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not at this point. It was more likely it was Pierce who did it using his authority code because they were both they both had the top level access.
Yeah.
So that's most likely what it was. But I mean, that's the other thing too. Is like, and We'll hopefully get that answer in Secret Invasion, which is coming up here in the next month or so at the time of this recording. By the time this episode airs, it'll probably be like...
Here soon, yeah, right?
Yeah, within the month. But, yeah, that'll be something I'm curious whether they'll address, is like how long have the Skrulls been infiltrating at that point? And we'll find out. Yeah,
because I know it's, there's the theories that it's been like almost the whole time we've seen Nick Fury in the MCU.
Yep.
Debatably, so...
And fueling that tinfoil hat is in the events of Far From Home, where it's revealed that Talos and his lovely wife have been impersonating Nick Fury and Maria Hill the entire movie.
Yeah.
So that's something that, happens at the end of Phase 3, so we know for a fact the Skrulls have at least been in play around this time, but we don't know for sure when they came in.
Because what was it in... Did we talk about it here on this podcast, about the way Nick Fury eats a sandwich?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, but like how that was like a tell that like, oh, that must be a Skrull because he didn't eat the sandwich right.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, man. I'm with you, but...
I mean, you can always count on people on the internet to like try to, especially hardcore fans, to like go over every detail of everything.
Uh-huh. I don't have the time to do that. I just have the time to watch people do that on the internet.
Well, there you go. So, yeah, but was there anything else you kind of wanted to address as kind of final thoughts on this movie?
I mean, yeah, I think we've said it all. Like, it was just a great movie. Again, yeah, you kind of had to watch, like, Captain America 1, or at least, like, understand the general gist of it, but as a self-contained movie, it was still great for just casual people to jump in and watch. Mm-hmm. It wasn't, like, overly complicated. Like, it was, the gist of it was a spy thriller with some, like, superhero shenanigans, like, you a comic book nerd, and me, like, knowing of comic books would enjoy... like deeper meaning in.
Yeah.
But I think it did good, to help build the MCU as being a thing for everybody, not just comic book nerds.
Yeah, and something we pointed out in the last recording, and I want to bring up again here, is that this movie doesn't involve the Infinity Stones. Mm-hmm. Which is one of the only like Phase 2 movies featuring the main Avengers cast to not do that. Mm-hmm. Which is very, very weird. And even Guardians, too. Like,
yeah, Guardians still had something.
Guardians had deals with the Power Stone.
Yep.
So, I mean, you have here, it's like, yeah, I think Iron Man 3 doesn't, but then Thor 2 does. Mm-hmm. Introduce the Aether. And then here again, no Infinity Stone. And then Power Stone comes in Guardians. And then no Infinity Stone in Ant-Man. So, but then the Mind Stone becomes a center point in Age of Ultron, too. So it's like, they did a pretty good job, like, balancing and, leading in. But yeah, Winter Soldier, weirdly enough, doesn't really do a whole lot to, like, advance the Infinity Stone saga.
No.
But it does really build on, like, the ground level of the MCU a bit more.
Yes.
And, obviously set the stage for what will happen in Civil War and future films. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, again, this is... Again, I would say this is in my top 5 of MCU films. I would probably rank it maybe number 3 at the lowest.
Oh, okay.
I'd probably rank Endgame and Infinity War a bit higher, but this one's up there. Mm-hmm. And, it is interesting. We didn't really cover this a lot, but the decision to kind of make Cap, all Captain America movies, like Avengers, like 1.5 and 2.5.
Yeah, like the halfway point.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of all-stars in Cap's movies, and I think that worked. Whereas Thor, his character struggles a bit. We talked a lot about that in Thor: The Dark World.
Yeah.
And then obviously we won't see a whole lot of Tony in individual movies anymore. He doesn't get his own solo films moving forward from this.
Correct.
So it's interesting that, at least when it comes to their big 3, like, Cap is the one they kind of found that immediate fit right away. Like... At least for, Phase 2 and Phase 3.
Yeah, I mean, he is one of the main leaders of the Avengers, so they kind of just use his movies to bring... It's not a huge Avenger-level event most of the time, but to have a reason to bring everybody together.
Yep. So, I don't know. And, like I said, it's the introduction of Falcon, I think, is a pretty big role, and I'm really happy that Mackie has crushed it.
Yeah,
and
I think that's putting it nicely.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to him as his own Captain America movie. I think he's going to do a great job. So that's all we have here. We'll wrap up at about the 1 hour mark. Again, my name is Shenzo the Lost. This is Shoshima 1016. You can find him on Twitter at Zachary1016. You can find me pretty much everywhere at Shenzo the Lost. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.